we have War Games this time. It was released in 1983. It's rated PG. It's techno thrillers, at least how I would classify it. David Lightman is a young computer hacker who gets caught up in a war simulation that turns real. This movie inspired many computer kids that grew up in the 80s and 90s. It's an interesting story with story themed around nuclear war and also AI. Even though they don't call it AI, just a machine that can learn, today it's closer to the AI we would recognize. Let's take a look at the hacks in the movie and kind of see the movie through that. First one is a school hack. The passwords are being written on a note on a desk. It's very plausible. Modern modem dialing into the high school system in 1983, well, that's kind of questionable. Not to mention the interface for assigning the grades. I would expect more of a prompt than a type over system. However, it could have been plausible. So war dialing or phone freaking to access software game company's system, this is very plausible. I didn't get into modems and BBSs until about the mid-90s. However, war dialing and getting a connection is possible. There really wasn't any real caller identification back then, and having a program just grind through the numbers could be easily written. I remember doing something like that in BASIC with COM ports and sending it modem commands. Now, logging into the military system. The command list and the zero passwords are very questionable. However, I'm not completely familiar with what was used at the time. So the computer guys, who were kind of the inspiration I feel for Rob and Moss and IT crowd, note that the geek and then the more social guy with the t-shirt, their suggestion about backdoors is accurate. Falken's Maze suggestion was also very good. I solved recently a similar problem with kind of just going an off-road search. If you kind of search by the name, not really the problem, it can lead to some interesting answers. Now, the security door. If this door relied on a tone and he knew where to feed the signal, then maybe this would work. This one's kind of very questionable and unlikely. Phone systems use tones to make the right tones to make calls, and of course Captain Crunch with his whistle knew some of that magic. Now let's look at the touring crowd in the military base. Yeah, I don't think that would fly. However, the writers said they visited NORAD and met with the commander there. I suspect that was a special engagement for the visit. The war room, as they would have called it, it would have been like a skiff, so it required special clearance. And they wouldn't have just random people going through it. Trust me, don't go up to a military base. You must have a proper escort. Now, force dialing a payphone. I knew some kids that knew some payphone tricks, like making it call and dial itself. So this may be plausible. The trick that most people used to make was calling collect, and then they would use the free time to send a message in place of a name. It was so famous that they made a commercial about it, so it was pretty common. Now, there's a couple other movie items I want to look at. One, Joshua and the Whopper. There was a study of machine learning back in the 60s and 70s. It wasn't too fruitful. However, the techniques of simulated annealing and stochastic methods do allow for some learning. And this would have been known at the time. And they could have done some simulation learning as shown. I did some back with a checkers program back in college. And the thought of the nuclear war as a no-win game, yeah, I think that's 100% probable. And yet we have to develop and maintain a system like NORAD, because since the nuclear bombs exist, the other stuff has to exist with all these deterrent systems. Now, I rate this movie a 3 out of 4, mainly because the cultural impact was so high of this movie. And even though when it was thought to be, when it was released, it was just an interesting story with an okay performance. I think David's girlfriend's a bit awkward, but she represents the audience that didn't know anything about technology. Overall, this is a good one, and I definitely recommend it. And thanks for watching.